All right, good evening. My name is Richard Niebuhr. I'm the acting chair of the Appropriations Committee, and it's just past the hour of 7 o'clock, so I will call the Appropriations Committee to order. Before getting into our agenda, I have some opening statements that must be read at this time. To begin, this open meeting of the Appropriations Committee being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth and due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the town of Northborough has been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of the Appropriations Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the Appropriations Committee to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to the Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed in the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure the public participation unless participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. Members, when I call out your name, please respond in the affirmative. George Benkel. Your mic is muted, George.
Here.
Bob D'Amico.
Here.
Janice Height.
Here.
Anthony Petit.
Here.
The acting chair, myself, Rick Niebuhr, and our town administrator, John Kadir.
Present.
And also speaking with us tonight will be the Public Works Director, Scott Charpentier.
Present.
So with all members all members here, we'll go to our first meeting. First on the agenda is the approval of the February 11th minutes from 2021. So I have a motion to approve the minutes.
Move the approve the minutes of February 11th, 2021.
Bob D'Amico has moved to approve the minutes. So I have a second.
Second.
Who is Tony? Was it
Tony.
Tony Petit? Seconded. We'll take a roll call for approval. Janice, do you approve?
Sorry, I was muted.
We need approval of the minutes. Please respond aye. George, do you approve?
Aye.
Bob D'Amico.
Aye.
Janice Height.
Aye.
Anthony Petit.
Aye.
And myself, aye. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which comes from the DPW department and their operating project update and the financial 2022 operating budget presentation. I will turn this over to John Kadir at this moment.
Sure. So just to set the table for you a little bit in your packet, there are a couple documents. There's a memo from DPW director updating you on his several capital projects. There's also a memo following that regarding a grant application that he has made. And then there's a couple of spreadsheets. As always, we give you the finished budget document with the mission statement, the goals, the personnel tables, products and services, and all the line items. But we also give you a little cheat sheet with all the percentage increases so that you don't have to kind of go through. And Scott will highlight what's in motion, but not to steal his thunder. But as you know from last week, it's basically level service budget, minimal increases, and minimal restoration of some of the cuts that we made last year due to COVID. But with that, I'll turn it over to Scott to run you through the memo. And Scott, would you like me to screen share, or do you want the screen share to go through
I'll just screen share. It'll be easier for me.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'm going to share my screen. And I will start out with the project updates memorandum that John referenced. So we provided you with a memorandum on February 4th regarding our project updates. There's a series of them. I'll go through them relatively quickly and give you the highlights. If there's any detailed questions related to the projects, feel free to ask me while I'm discussing them or at the end. So at first is our pavement management program. As you're aware, we have 3 funding mechanisms for it. Chapter 90 at $500,000, $300,000 in our operating budget. Another $300,000 is allocated out of free cash in the capital improvement plan, totaling $1.1 million. We've been doing this for a number of years. Our roadway surface rating, or our the grade basically for our pavement, actually fell in 2020 from its 2019 rating. You can see here in the graph, it fell from a 73.9 to a 73.5. So these grades are the same grades as you would see in school. So it's a solid C. The primary reason for the fall is due to allocation of part of this $1.1 million to other roadway infrastructure, specifically culverts. I'll go into the culverts a little later on another project update. But culverts are not cheap to replace. They can range from a $2 million project that we did at Church Street, which was part cash and part debt, to a $300,000 culvert at Rice Ave, or $300,000 over at Fisher Street. So we're proposing another series of culvert projects this coming year. They were actually recently bid and awarded. I'll give you an update on that. We were able to address 12.4 miles of road in calendar 20. Our goal is to touch at least 10% of our roads. So we have 80 miles of road. So I want to do at least 8 miles. We try to do a series of different treatments and take a regional approach each year, but popping around to different regions of town. So it's not all focused in, south of 290, so to speak. There's cost savings associated with mobilization when you do construction projects like that. So again, it's a minor decrease in the pavement management, the pavement index. We've done a good job in trying to maintain it. But again, allocating funds out of that 1.1 million to other needs certainly doesn't help. Our next project that was recently completed is a field lighting project that was funded through the Community Preservation Committee and approved at town meeting, two town meetings. Back in 2016, we had a light tower fail at Melican Middle School. It was an old wood pole. It fell on the tennis courts. Luckily, no kids were outside during recess. We assessed all the wooden poles. They were all exhibiting the same level of rot. The wood just rots at the loom line. You got a solid 12 inches of loom on a field, and it's irrigated. So we had all the poles removed. We sought funds at town meeting in 2018 to purchase field lights. We were able to get a very competitive price. So we were able to purchase LED lights. They come with a 20-year warranty, full parts and labor for replacement. When we were doing the design layout for it, I was able to reconfigure the light setup, which was previously only installed for the softball baseball field, to accommodate what you see before you, which is 2 full-size athletic fields. So while it wasn't a field project and we didn't actually reconstruct the lower left-hand corner to be a field, the lighting is there for the future when a field construction project can go in. In 2019, we were awarded $290,000 at town meeting. We were granted the funding. Construction was done and complete. We ran into a couple hiccups last year with COVID, just trying to get the seed to establish. We missed the first seeding cycle, and the drought certainly didn't help. So we have the contractor coming back to do a reseed in the spring. But all in all, it's a great project. The lights are amazing. You can turn them on with an app from home, and they turn on instantly. You don't wait for 10 minutes like in the old lights you had to wait. So it's a great program. It's a huge asset to the school as well as the community. Now we're on to our culvert project. So we identified 3 culverts recently that were in very poor condition. I'll show you a photograph of them. This is the culvert underneath Davis Ave. Davis Ave, this conveys a tributary to the Assabet River. There's currently 2 roadway plates on the shoulder with a barrel on top of them to identify the hazard. The bottom of the culvert looks pretty bad. Well, the top is just as bad as you go in. there's a hole the size to big enough to put a barrel in. When we tried to put the barrel to cover the hole, it eroded in, so we had to put a roadway plate over it. We have another culvert on Ridge Road. If you've driven Ridge Road lately, you'll see the roadway plates that are keyed in with some asphalt on Ridge Road. That had a catastrophic failure on the downstream side, so we have roadway plates in place there. And the other culvert is on Lyman Street. It's right between where the hot dog truck goes and Watson Park. That location, that culvert, it's interesting. It's a stone box culvert on the inlet side. It must have failed many years ago, a decade ago. And somebody, one of my predecessors, decided it was a good idea to slide a smaller pipe up the outlet. So as water goes in a big square, it hits a small circle inside the culvert. Needless to say, we have a lot of debris issues. Turtles get caught in there. It's a very poor hydraulic condition, and that roadway occasionally overtops and the roadbed saturates. So we included that as a replacement. So just these 3 culverts, as you can see, total almost $300,000, with $71,000 at Ridge, and then Davis and Lyman at 91 and 107. So it's another $300,000 we're taking out of our 1.1 million for roadway maintenance. The bid was awarded to the same contractor actually did Rice Ave. He's going to be doing some test pits the next couple of weeks to identify some utilities. And the expectation is for construction to proceed through the low flow season and be complete, at least substantially, before school buses start rolling next fall. This is a project that was, maybe John can give a little background on how this project came about before I introduce the actual project itself.
Yeah, just very briefly, there was a complaint regarding the accessibility of the very long 20-year-old Assabet Park. And the complaint was that the surface wasn't ADA compliant or handicapped accessible. We wound up before the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board under that complaint, and the Access Board took the position that every time we replace the mulch around the park, that technically the park has to become ADA compliant. Now, obviously, when you make improvements to facilities, you want to bring them up to compliance, and certainly you want to do everything you can to make things ADA compliant. But in this case, we're waiting for a full upgrade to the park to do that. It doesn't make sense to spend $100,000 on creating a paved surface around the play equipment that is in and of itself ready to be replaced. So anyway, we were under an order from the Access Board. They gave us 6 months. We appealed it, and then ultimately I negotiated a settlement to give us a little bit of time to do a full park renovation, which is what we offered them when we went into Boston to meet with them. So ultimately we were able to get that compromise, and the park equipment is over 20 years old, and we've got some other issues there that need to be addressed. But this is going to be a fantastic project. And ultimately, it would have been nice to have worked in partnership with the Access Board instead of having to wind up in an appeal in court. But we ended up in the right place, I believe. And again, it's going to be a fantastic project moving forward.
So we've, as John indicated, we were awarded some funding at town meeting, both from free cash, as you see, a little over $100,000, and slightly over $450 from CPC. We engaged a landscape architect. The landscape architect we're working with actually specializes and is passionate about playgrounds. The goal and objective was to incorporate the basketball courts into the play space. The basketball courts are really not a user group that should be playing right next to a 2 to 5 year old playground. They have facilities at Ellsworth. That's where the basketball courts are. So it gives us one more space to accommodate accessible play equipment and more free space. So the landscape architect has been working with myself, recreation director, Allie Lane, and coming up with some schematics, balancing some budget ideas. What you see before you is where the project sits as a conceptual, as a preliminary design. It's a poured rubber surface. There are a lot of different play apparati, interactive ones as well, you know, ones that tic-tac-toe boards and wheels and noisemakers and things like that. The oval you see around is actually a little poured rubber bike track that has little kiosks around it. One of the things that the basketball court was used for, more than basketball, was kids riding their little tricycles around and stuff. So we figured we'd incorporate that into it and make it part of the play space. In addition, there's a slope on the back side of the park to the left. That little horseshoe that loops around here, that actually incorporates the slope into a slide, so kids can go up the slope, slide down, go up the slope, and not have to go up a ladder. It's a lot safer for children, and allows more accessibility to the top of a slide, which is beneficial. We've also included a small pavilion that is at the splash pad elevation, so the parents can sit in the shade, have kids in the splash pad, and have children also at the playground, and be able to see all of them at the same time. So the status of the project is that we are now engaging some citizens, some residents in town who expressed interest in being part of the process. It's sort of a stakeholders group. We've shared a lot of information with them about play equipment, colors, and we're expecting a couple meetings to occur in the next few months and put this thing out to bid, you know, late spring, you know, and get it constructed over the summer and fall. I don't have any beautiful graphics for this, but due to the COVID budgetary constraints last year, one of the capital projects that the school had to be reduced. Milliken Middle School is our only voting location now, and the gymnasium where the voting occurs is not wheelchair accessible. They required a lot of rental accommodations to make it wheelchair accessible. So the school department put a capital budget in for $100,000 to make that those entrances and exits wheelchair accessible, and to do some parking lot improvements. When the pandemic hit and the budgets got tight, they cut their budget proposal by 50% and dropped it down to $50,000. And DPW was able to manage the projects, design the project, bid it out, get it awarded, oversee the construction, and see the completion of it. So it was a good example of you know, the town's administrative side working with the school administration on a project that benefits everybody, and at the end saves everybody quite a bit of money. So it was a good project, and it was done before you know, the limited school began again in the fall. Next is a proposal we have before the Community Preservation Committee. They actually voted unanimously in favor of it earlier in the month. Pickleball is a very popular sport. There's a bunch of courts in Westboro over by on Lyman Street over by Lake Chauncey. They used to be tennis courts. They were all converted to pickleball recently. It's a growing sport amongst adults as well as children, and it's a real focus for our older population in town. The only court we have currently is indoors at the gymnasium at Town Hall. It's one court, Town Hall's closed. It's shared with youth basketball, adult basketball. There's not a lot of accommodations, not a lot of time available for use. So we did a study at different town-owned properties. Where would a logical location be to construct pickleball? We looked at the senior center. We looked at some vacant land that we own. The logical location was what you see before you. So as you pull into Ellsworth McPhee Park, immediately on the left-hand side, there's a large grass area, very seldom used. Most of the time, when people are using the pavilion, they're over here. Very rarely do they go over close to the road. It's a good pocket location for pickleball. CPC approved the funding for it. It's a $290,000 project. We're hoping to get support from town meeting for the construction. The goal would be, again, to design it in the summer and construct it in the fall and finalize it in the spring. So hopefully people can be playing the following year. It received a lot of positive input online when we released some information to the public. It's a need. It's a growing sport. A lot of people love it, and it's a good use at this facility for adults when their children off playing lacrosse and soccer, they can go grab the pickleball paddle and have a few games, get some exercise, and still be at the facility. This is our water sewer garage, our second maintenance facility down at the water sewer department. Again, we were authorized funding at town meeting last year for construction in the amount of $900,000. This project is pretty unique in that we bid out construction of the slab, the site work, and the building shell and envelope. So, doors, windows, insulation, building shell, foundation, and rough-in utilities. That's it. The remaining work is going to be constructed by the Assabet technical students. They're going to come in with the assistance of our engineering firm, who's going to prepare permit documentation. I'm going to serve as a general overseer of the project. It's a great opportunity for the students. These students in the carpentry class, they in the systems classes, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, electrical. They don't often get to work in a large prefabricated metal building as students, but when they're out on the street and they're working in their trades, this is what they're going to work in. This is what people build when you have this, large, either like a contractor yard. So it's a great opportunity for them. It's a good opportunity for the town. We're saving a lot of money and labor for the outfitting of the building. We got a little delayed with COVID, so we lost one semester. But next fall we'll be ready for the students to come in, and they'll be able to work indoors during the winter. So it'll be a great project when it's done. This is the Aspet Hill water storage tank project that is actually out for bid now. We're proposing to rehabilitate the tank. The tank was found to have some cracking and need a clean and coating. In addition, the tank does not have a mixing system in it. It's a large tank. You can get thermal stratification. You can have a cold water, warmer water separation in the tank, which is not the best for water quality. Like most water storage tanks, there's one pipe that enters the tank. It pushes water in and takes water out. So if you can imagine that, the water in and around that pipe is the new water and the used water. The older water tends not to get turned over very often. So we're proposing a non-mechanical mixing system. It's pretty cool. It's a long baffle pipe that goes along the bottom, and it has a bunch of check valve duct bills that shoot water up into the tank, and then the side valves take water out of the tank throughout the diameter of the tank. So again, that's out for bid. We're very limited in construction windows on when you're allowed to drain a tank. So they'll be draining it in the fall and doing the interior construction in the fall. It's a small project. What we did as part of our operating budget a couple of years ago was put in a systematic pump station improvement line item in the operating budget for $60,000. The goal and intent of that was to address the needs of some of our smaller pump stations. Hudson Street Pump Station is a massive pump station. It receives 99% of our flow. It needed $1 million rehab. West Main Street, that captures almost all of our commercial and restaurant areas in Times Square and in one of our schools. That needed a rehab. Some of the smaller ones, Forbes Road, Weston Terrace, Town Hall Pump Station, they don't see a lot of flow. Their needs are more limited. So in a year, we were able to replace the generator, Forbes Road, with a new generator. The old one didn't have a transfer switch, didn't have an alarm, so a light went on. And then hopefully somebody would see the light, and it would call the police, and then we go out there and we turn the generator on. Not the best way to operate a sanitary sewer pump station. So this is an automated transfer switch. The generator self-exercises. It's how it's supposed to be. And we were able to fit that into the operating budget. We're doing another one of these at Weston Terrace this calendar year 21. Calendar year 22, we want to do some communication improvements to some of our pump stations and just chip away at these smaller but very important pump station improvements without capturing $250,000 capital item in order to do it. It's a good use of resources, and it's a stable way to maintain and improve our pump stations. So that's all for the project updates. Does anybody have any questions on any of the projects we have going? I went kind of fast, I know. I have a grant update I'm going to share with you now. So we submitted a grant application to Mass DOT. Mass DOT has it's called the Shared Winter Streets and Spaces Grant Program. The intent is to fund fast-hitting projects that can get people outdoors or get people who are outdoors to be safer. That's the intent. They focus on recreation, on senior community, and on children. So one of the projects we looked at, and I know was envisioned way back when the senior center was being constructed, was a trail around the grounds, because the senior center has some beautiful grounds. So what we did is we engaged a landscape architect to help us do a little layout. And what you see before you is a fully wheelchair accessible, ADA compliant trail system around the senior center. And a couple of the objectives were to have shorter loops where seniors could just do a quick walk, or longer, more challenging loops where they could, take a long stroll, and then really truncated ones for those that just don't have the energy or it's too hot to get out there. So there's a lot of options here, and it does tie in to the Edmonds Hill Trail Network at 2 locations. It's a $240,000 project. Unfortunately, it was not awarded funding. I spoke with the town, with the state. It was a very competitive grant round, and it was unfortunately not awarded. We are seeking other grant funds for the project. The AARP has a grant program that provides limited funding for like preliminary design and cost estimating. So we're gonna submit an application for that program to get the survey, the construction cost estimate, and a little more design done on the project. The project is good. It's needed. We have a lot of positive input from the residents and the citizens and the users of the senior center. So it's still alive and active. We're just kicking the money tree and seeing what can fall out of it. I'm hoping the AARP can help us down that road. So the Shared Winter Streets and Spaces Grant Program has one more round coming, and we are seeking funds for some pedestrian safety improvements. And like I said before, the program is fast hitting. The current grant round applications are due April 26th. The awards are announced March 26th. Every dollar needs to be spent by May 31st. March 26th to May 31st, that is not a lot of time. That's not enough time to do a public bid package, procurement on the street, hire a contractor, get him to purchase equipment, which typically has a lead time, and then install it by May 31st. So what we did was I'm going to share another screen. We put together an application to improve pedestrian safety at our recreational facilities. So what you see here is Longfellow Road and South Street. The proposed pickleball park here is right here. What the project includes is rapid flashing rectangular beacons, crosswalk restriping, cement concrete wheelchair ramps that are ADA compliant, as well as improved signage. So again, some of the goals of the program are recreation, children, and seniors, and pedestrian safety. So pickleball is very popular amongst the senior community. Ellsworth McAfee Park, as well as Memorial, Casey, and Assabet are frequented by children, especially on foot pedestrians. It's a very viable project from their perspective, I believe. Similar projects were awarded in the last round. So we're proposing this treatment here at the Longfellow South Street intersection. We're also proposing it at the Davis Ave crosswalk, which serves the Ellsworth McAfee Park. We're proposing it up at Assabet. That'll be across South Street. And then one between Memorial Field and Casey Field. That sees a lot of foot traffic between ball players and parents going back and forth. the goal and objective of the project is meets a lot of the needs of the grant program. The total project value is just over $57,000. We have a public outreach program. We sent out a public notice to through town news. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from it. So we're looking forward to submitting a strong grant application. And one of the ways we're able to do this is I secured competitive quotes for the equipment. The equipment is these that you've seen. These sets are about $9,000. These lights are about $9,000 per crossing. So I already got competitive quotes from those. The installation of them will be done by DPW, so we don't have to procure a contractor for that. The striping from the crosswalks will be done by DPW, and the concrete wheelchair ramp installations will be done by a contractor procured through sound business practices. So we're able to get the project done in the time required in the grant program. So it's a good package, and I'm confident that it's going to be received well by the state. So that's my project update. About 30 minutes. I hit my mark, I think. Any questions on the Shared Winter Streets grant?
Rick, through the chair, can I ask a question?
Yes, go Bob.
Hi, Scott. Yeah, I like the presentation's great. Thank you for all the work and the projects and everything. I just had one simple question, basically with preventive maintenance questions over the long-term years and stuff. I mean, yeah, I mean, the culverts, do they need to be maintained, and how much was that cost? You know, the playground, I mean, that's going to cost money to keep that maintained. Pickleball courts, that has maintenance. I was just wondering if we've allocated funds for that, or are we going to, or because there's going to be some cost there.
We have operating budget funds for maintenance of the playground, and the poured rubber surface does require cleaning. It's less labor intensive than mulch rejuvenation. It's actually called wood fiber rejuvenation, and the play equipment itself is going to be far easier to maintain. You know, the play equipment that's there now, it looks great from the car, but when you get out there in the spring, there's a lot of maintenance associated with that. It's 20 years old. So we're going to see less labor needs at Assabet. Pickleball, you know, as long as we keep, kids with cleats off of it, and we don't utilize it in the wintertime because it's actually a specialized sports surface coating. So as long as, people aren't out there, when it's, shoveling it, let's say, to try to play a game in the wintertime, that'll I'm confident that will be a low maintenance item.
Yeah, because I never asked the question, like the skateboard park, how much does it cost to keep that maintained and all that? And I was just wondering, we're getting all these little things, and I mean, they all have a cost to it. So I was just wondering if it's all still within our operating budget.
It is. The skate park does need some maintenance. Some of the edges are loosening, and they need to be worked on. It's a little bit of a different animal over there because it's concrete, and when a concrete nosing gets loose, you've got some real construction repair going. Regarding the culverts, that culvert you saw was a galvanized steel corrugated metal pipe. What happens when you use galvanized steel? The sediment, the little pieces of sand and stuff in the water going over that galvanized steel for year after year after year takes it off, wears out the bottom. And what happened at Rice Ave, it wore it out so bad that the culvert actually did that and then fell. So the horseshoe of a culvert fell down. So everything we're proposing is either reinforced concrete or high density polyethylene, preference being reinforced concrete. So
I was wondering about that. Yeah, okay.
It's got a 75-year lifespan. It's far more durable than what was previously used.
Okay.
We did a full culvert inventory throughout town. We have photographs and assessments of every single culvert in town. We have like 78 of them.
Yeah, I think it's
ranges from little 12-inch ones that look just as bad to big ones, 36 inches on Davis Ave that goes, it goes under a water main, under a 2-inch gas main, and over a sewer main. So that's going to be a fun one to replace.
All right.
If I can
Thanks.
comment through the chair, just, I want people to keep in mind here, culverts like roofs, And roads, they don't sneak up on you. When you have a lot of culverts that are failing, that's poor planning. And I'm not pointing a finger at Scott or even his predecessor, but when you go back further and the town wasn't inventorying their roads, they weren't inventorying their infrastructure, we didn't know the conditions, we weren't planning and setting aside funding like we are doing now. Those culverts, we had many of them in bad shape. Like Scott said, we did Church Street, we did Otis Street, we did Fisher, we did Rice, all in a short period of time because they were in bad shape. And they're in bad shape, and shame on us because we allowed that to sneak up on us. But we've been at this now for probably 5-6 years where we got a handle on that infrastructure. And this is why when at the next selectmen's meeting on not this one coming up, but the March 8th meeting, we're going to have our legislative delegation in. And one of the things that I'm going to provide to you is a copy of our legislative priorities. It's not a surprise that our top legislative priority is additional Chapter 90 funds, which can be used for roadway maintenance and infrastructure improvements. And the state has habitually underfunded that. And the town has a solid plan that's in place to stabilize and maintain, but we really need additional funding to get that graph that Scott showed you on an upward trajectory. But the culverts, I just want to acknowledge, these things have been neglected they were neglected for a long time. You pay the price. You hear us talk about capital all the time, about knowing if you're not going to do something, you're going to postpone something, you need to know what the implications are and what it will cost you later to do it. For a very long time, with regard to roads and infrastructure, again, this is several, administrations back, we just weren't doing that. And so Scott's predecessor, but Scott has really done an excellent job of getting a handle on these things and making some great headway. But it takes money to fix this stuff. And in an ideal world and in a perfect plan, you don't let these things build up on you. It's one of the reasons why we stress so hard that we need to continually maintain the roads that we have. And I know there's a call out there from a segment of the population that wants more sidewalks, and we're all in favor of more sidewalks. You have to take care of the ones that you have, and you have to take care of your roadways. If you're building new sidewalks and you're neglecting your existing ones and your roads, and it's going to cost you 4 or 5 times as much money because you lose those assets, that's not good planning. We need to maintain what we have, fix it first, and then expand with additional infrastructure or sidewalks if that turns out to be a priority for the community. But we need to do that in a responsible way that has recurring revenues to support that. So again, I get it. Not everybody takes the time to look at all the implications and all the history that goes into the work that we do to plan for this infrastructure. But that's why we don't just add a sidewalk because it would be nice to have a sidewalk somewhere. You got to take care of the assets that you have, and you have to do this in a coherent, coordinated, comprehensive plan. And that's what we do in the town. I would love to expand that plan. Scott would love to expand that plan, but it takes money. And we're going to need that from the state, or we're going to need it from the taxpayers. So we want to be very careful about how we expand that infrastructure investment. So I don't want anybody to walk away thinking, that the current folks have ignored these things. These are problems that have built up over, 30, 40 years or more. And, but it goes to show why our capital plan is just so important, that you just can't ignore these things. You're not saving money by not spending money on capital. You're just postponing it. It's going to cost you more down the line.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, Bob. George.
There's an attachment that goes over the details of what was done for pavement management in 2020. Is there something that says, here's what our target is for 2021?
We have our list of roadways that we're compiling now. I can't let you know that a couple of the targeted locations is in the upper Northgate area, continuing some work down on School Street as well.
Okay.
So, when we have long roads, like, School Street's a really long road, Green Street, Brewer, some of those are really long and expensive roads to work on. We try to chip away at them periodically, year after year. So, we did Brigham Street over a 2-year period. We've done School Street so far over 2 separate years, and I'm hoping to complete it this 3rd year. We did a lot of work in the lower Northgate area and Northgate itself. So I'm looking to get into the upper Northgate area that hasn't been touched yet. We did north of 290 2 years ago. In the next year, I'd like to get back up to north of 290 and do some work up there. So, like John said, the resources are limited, but there's a lot of residents in town, and one of the things I think it's important is that they see that their resources are being spent in their areas as well. So we try to we try to get the butter on all quarters of the bread if we can.
Okay.
Going back to the pickleball court, would it be feasible, well, since it hasn't been built yet, to think about putting up some sort of tubular structure or some sort of framework where in the future a canvas top or netting could be put up for, cut down on the sun or whatever and help protect the court in different ways?
It's something to look at. There is there's adequate park space on the roadway side. We're pushing it back away from the existing fence line there, so there'll be adequate space to do that in the future if warranted. One of the nice ways to do it when it comes from a sun perspective is in a pergola fashion, because you have much lower structural loading on it. You're not holding 3 feet of snow with an ice storm on top of it. So there's options there. That would be a wonderful Assabet student project. We hire an engineer to design it, and they can build it and wrap it in PVC, and it'll look beautiful. Something similar to what went up at the town common by the gas station, but much larger in scale, obviously.
Do you have any other comments from the committee? Let's see.
Me, Janice.
Janice, yes.
Any plans for indoor pickleball in the winter? Do you have any? I realize that space is limited, but there must be something around if they want to play pickleball this time of year.
I'll field that one. We don't have any plans for indoor pickleball facility. What we do have is the gym at Town Hall is used for indoor pickleball, but obviously that's limited. We had looked at, I had met with a group a couple years ago to look at some kind of a facility, but basically you're talking about building a large gym, and it's a very expensive proposition. There might be some, I don't want to get into it right now, but there might be some other possibilities in the future that we'll look at. A little premature, but to buy, just to build basically a large gym, you're looking at several $1 million to put something like that together. So the outdoor courts get a lot of use though, and they'll be very, very well received. It's an extremely popular sport right now.
Okay, well, seeing no further comments, I guess the next item on the agenda is the water and sewer, but I guess John would give us.
Well, we're going to, the next item would be, excuse me, Chair, I don't mean to interrupt, but would be the DPW FY22 operating budget.
So thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have you have the operating budget. Do you want to share the spreadsheet, John? Do you want to share it, or?
Yeah, let me just.
So the 2020 operating budget, FY 2022 operating budget, doesn't have any earth-shattering changes. As you can see, overall, the general fund side, it's a 2.91% increase, a little over $81,000. The vast majority of it is either labor or restoration of COVID cuts. We've had some line item budget reductions when the pandemic hit under FY21. Some of the material pieces of that are being restored. So amongst the cuts we saw to address the budgetary constraints of the pandemic were elimination of a full-time position, in my office, a assistant DPW director, and there was also some equipment replacement line items that were that were removed, and some other line items that were deducted and lowered. So we're not restoring the staff reduction. We are restoring and bolstering some of the equipment purchases and replacements. So of the $81,320, approximately $31,000 is allocated specifically to contractual union and non-union wages. We have another $30,000 that goes toward the equipment replacement line items. So during the pandemic, we reduced those line items substantially. You can see here the variance of under highway maintenance of 34,000, parks of 13, and cemetery of 14. Amongst these three lines, we're adding approximately $19,000 in addition to the COVID reductions. One of the goals and objectives that we're rolling into the general fund operating budget that we've done previously in the water sewer budgets is addressing some of the smaller equipment replacement needs that don't elevate to the capital replacement needs, similar to what John described about the school. So we have a small item, a generator or a compressor. They're $15,000. I can't fit a $15,000 replacement in the budget just because there's not that much flexibility. It doesn't rise to the elevation of a capital item either. So allocating $10,000 under highway construction and maintenance, $10,000 under parks, and $10,000 under cemeteries gives us that flexibility to address replacement needs, such as a roadside mower head. You know, that's a $22,000 piece of equipment. We have it currently in parts sitting in our garage, and we're going to try to piece that thing together so we can get back on the road in the spring and do our work. It's not a capital item, and I don't have a line item budget item for it. This will allow those, relative catastrophic failures of small pieces of equipment to be addressed in the fiscal year when they're needed. So again, we're putting back about $11,000 of equipment replacement that was removed due to COVID, and we're bolstering it by an additional $19,000 to address things like mower heads, hydraulic pumps, for example. One of our wide area mowers had a catastrophic hydraulic pump failure. It was one $7,000 pump and two $3,000 pumps. So that's a $13,000 hit in your operating budget that you just don't budget for. This will help us get through those times. In addition to that, we've increased, as you can see, the street lighting budget by $10,000. John, do you want to touch on where that street lighting budget has been historically?
Yeah, so we need to reflect the more accurately what we're experiencing in terms of the street lighting costs. So as you know, we negotiate an aggregation rate, and so we're under a new contract. We had a very favorable rate under the last aggregation contract. This time around, the rate is a little bit higher, so we're seeing a little increase in street lighting. One of the things that we've had extensive discussions with is looking at purchasing our street lights and converting them to LEDs. There's a program for that, and under the, as you know, we are a green community, so we have the ability to work with the Green Community Grant Program. And that's one of the things that Becca Meekins, the Assistant Town Administrator, and Scott Charpentier were talking about today. We were looking at possibly doing that, and it could result in very significant energy savings. Of course, there is a capital outlay up front, and so you have to work those numbers to make sure it makes sense. But pretty confident that that's a good approach. Unfortunately, we need to get data from National Grid. And I'm not sure if we're going to be able to pull that together for this cycle, but if not this cycle, then the next cycle will be positioned to do that. But that's really going to be the only way to get the street light budget really significantly reduced. So we're hopeful. The way it would work is, in an ideal world, we would purchase the street lights from National Grid for some some nominal cost, and then used a grant to do the conversion, get a grant to do the conversion to LEDs. And then you sign a maintenance contract with like Shrewsbury Light and for maintenance, because now we'll own them, we'll have to maintain them. But the conversion from the LED, Becca Meekins worked on a project like this in Grafton, where she came from, and I believe she said they saw about a 60% reduction in energy costs. So it's definitely worthwhile, but it needs to cycle and pair up with the Green Communities Grant. But for now, we've had to increase that to better reflect the actual historic costs that we're seeing for streetlights.
So the largest percentage increase you see in any one division of Public Works general fund side is the trees. You'll see it's almost an 11% increase. It's only $5,000, but it's still a substantial percentage increase. As you all know, we've had some tree mortality years recently that are unheard of. Just driving around the streets, you can see it. And we remove approximately 65 trees a year, somewhere between 60 and 70 street trees that are dead or hazardous. And the challenges we have from a staffing perspective is that there are certain trees that we just can't remove without a crane. We have a bucket truck. We have very capable employees who are very safe when they do their work. But when there's trees that are leaning over homes or have power lines, three-phase power above, or just too decayed to be safely dropped, we need to hire a crane. And a crane is a $10,000 day. Every day a crane shows up, it's $10,000. A good day, and a crane can remove 4 trees, and that's a really good day. That's like with one move, and you got 2 trees at each location. So our budget for the trees under the contractual services went from $40,000 to $45,000. So previously we had 4 crane days. That's on a great day, on a great year, that's 16 trees out of the 65 that we removed. That's not a lot. And the last thing I want to do is have my foreman or my crews looking at a tree that needs a crane to remove it and say, I can give it a try. We're not doing that. So it'll sit and wait until we have budget. So this is our first step at bolstering the crane budget, so to speak, under the trees, so that these hazardous trees can be removed safely. Our guys are still removing trees right now for the 2020 list, and they're going to be posting the 21 list next month. So it takes all year to do it, and it's a lot of work. So if we can get over a couple of years, another crane day built into the budget, that's another 4 unsafe hazardous trees that can be taken down in a safe fashion with a crane. So that's the largest percentage increase. But again, overall, it's a 2.91% increase, $81,000 on a $2.9 million budget. It's not a lot of changes. The changes we are proposing, I believe, are reasonable, warranted, and I think they're economically makes sense to not band-aid together equipment that needs to be replaced just because we don't have budget for it. So I don't know if you guys have any questions. I know the detail sheets are there. I'm not sure if we want to go through it in detail. If there's anything, let me know.
I have one question through the chair, please.
Yes, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, not, I see your budget, and the only things when Scott, when I look at stuff is like, I look for large percentage increases and things like that. And so I don't see anything that you're reporting here as being a problem, but I do want to ask a question between the difference between fiscal year 2020 and 2021 under the highway construction. I mean, that's a 30% increase from 1.1 to almost 1.6. I was just wondering if you could explain that to me.
Yes, let me take a look.
I mean, I look at level budgeting, and so all of a sudden now we popped up at a new level, almost 30% more at 1.5 and 1.6. So I just, just kind of curious on that.
Highway CM, I'm sorry.
Yeah, highway construction and maintenance.
Yeah. 1.14 to 1.15.
I mean, should we have been doing 1.5 all this time, or, is there a reason why the price just jumped? Like almost
So
400,000?
what happened was, and I can explain it to you very simply. So the
Mhm.
FY21 budget
Mhm.
is the approved budget. It's not expended yet. The FY 2020 budget is what was expended.
Yeah.
And the roadway maintenance budget is often encumbered to the next fiscal year because I can't get all my paving done in June. And so we're going to bid out our paving in March. The contract's going to get awarded in April. I push the contractors as much as I can to do it during July and August because I don't want them mucking up the schools. So 9 times out of 10, I'll award a $600,000 construction project in April. And then when June 30th comes around, I encumber a large chunk of that contract to the following fiscal year. So when you see the actual expenditures during 20 for the roadway maintenance, we only spent $78,000. It's a $400,000 line item.
Mm.
The remainder of it was spent during the budget year of FY21, but it was FY20 money. So it doesn't appear in the FY20 actuals.
Okay.
It's the short answer is it's just a timing issue because construction doesn't necessarily match up to the fiscal year.
It doesn't
So-
translate. Okay. I
And
got it.
sometimes as you're packaging the stuff, as Scott said, you're packaging over 2 fiscal years to get a big project done. But in terms of the roadway maintenance, though, we spend $1.1 million a year. Sometimes some of it will get pushed into one fiscal year versus another, just how the projects lay out. It's simply a timing issue. The
Mhm.
expenditure amount, though, is consistent every year.
So your actual in 2021 could be lower too. You don't know. It could get pushed out or whatever, right?
Yeah, my expectation is that when we award the construction contract in April, I'll probably encumber 300,000 or 400,000. That'll get pushed out into, dirt spent during the 22 year. And, it's a struggle with the construction season, and it's the same thing with the permitting season. Well, most of our water sewer permits go on calendar year, and you're doing work from one fiscal year to the other during a calendar year of reporting. So
The other issue, Bob, that you'll see again when I give you a copy of our legislative priorities is one of the things that we asked the state is, well, let me back up. We spend 1.1 million on roadway maintenance, right, every year. About 500,000 of that is chapter 90 funds that we get from the state. One of the problems is when the state can't get their budget cycles done in time, they delay when we get that money, which means my good friend Scott, who sometimes is ready to go to bid something out, he can't bid it out because he's got a general fund contribution, but he's planning to spend, 100 or 200,000 out of that chapter 90 funds. If the state doesn't get it to us in a timely fashion, that bid can't go out and it has to wait for the next construction cycle. That is a continual problem. And you'll see it's something that we stress to the legislature, and the Mass Municipal Association has stressed to the legislature that if they don't approve those allotments in a timely fashion, it messes everybody up. The other thing that happens is then all of a sudden, everybody's in the market for paving contractors at the exact same time because they just released the Chapter 90 money, and we all know what happens when that occurs is it drives up the prices. So it's strictly a timing issue. But
So it's a fair statement to say that fiscal 2020 probably should have been higher, but it got put off the 2021 budget. That's a fair statement.
just a timing. It's just a
Okay.
timing issue.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Good question, though. I
Good
appreciate it.
explanation. Appreciate it.
Any other comments? Comments or questions?
If I may, through the chair, since we are being broadcast live and we may actually have somebody watching, and for folks at home, if I can, I'd just like to walk you just briefly through the anatomy of our budgets. Every departmental budget that we put together that will be online, but also that comes through the Appropriations Committee for review is structured the same way. This is the finished budget that Scott was basically referring to as he went through his presentation, despite the fact that I left it on the line item increases, because that's usually what people are focused on. But every budget is structured the same way. It starts with a mission statement, an explanation of the departmental structure and what they do. If there are related boards and committees that work with the department, in this case, we have the Cemetery Commission, Parks and Rec, the Water and Sewer Commission, and the Groundwater Advisory Committee. We explain who those are, what they do, and what their role is. Every budget has an organizational chart that ties into a larger organizational chart for the town of Northborough in its entirety. This is the organizational chart specific to DPW, and you can see the relations between the elected boards and the staff and the reporting lines. And then the budget that comes before you has a fiscal 2021 initiatives and accomplishments. So basically telling you what we did with the money that we received last year. That was the update that Scott largely gave you at the beginning of your meeting. It goes by the various divisions. And then there is the upcoming goals and initiatives for fiscal 2022. This is the fiscal year that this budget relates to, that begins on July 1 of 2021. And so you can see those goals and initiatives. These are the projects that we plan. And then every budget has one simple paragraph in straightforward language that tells you overall the DPW budget's going up a little over 81,000 or 2.91%. And then tells you the basic reasons, as Scott has already covered with you, is contractual wage increases and then restoration of small equipment budgets that were largely cut from the fiscal 2021 budget. Then every department has a chart of programs and sub-programs. Basically tells you in a little more detail what the department does. This is one of my favorite things. Every single department in the town, we provide you with a 5-year personnel summary. So you can see all the positions in the department and what has happened to those positions over a 5-year period. Now, this draws your attention to the bottom line here, as Scott pointed out. In fiscal 2021, we reduced 1.48, those one full-time and one 19-hour-a-week position from the budget due to COVID when we made those reductions. We eliminated out of the budget the assistant DPW director position, which was 50% funded in the general fund and then split between the water and sewer enterprise funds. And we eliminated a part-time administrative assistant who was working basically the front counter and taking bills and so forth. And once we closed our buildings because of COVID, there really was no purpose for that position. And instead we have contracted with a lockbox service that processes all the checks and payments that people send in. But the cut of basically 1.48 FTEs has been carried forward in FY22. But under the personnel is anytime you go across from left to right for any of these positions and you see that number changed, that number is explained in verbiage underneath of each of these personnel tables. Now, something unique to DPW that you don't see in other departments is because we have the general fund, the highway, but then we also have a water and sewer enterprise funds, and those costs are budgeted separately, and you'll be discussing those with Scott at a separate meeting. We provide you with another personnel table that breaks out the full-time equivalent, the FTEs, by where they're budgeted. And it all ties out to the same number, but you can see, for instance, that the DPW director, his time is split between the general fund and the water and sewer enterprise funds. Following the personnel table, 5-year history for every department, are the actual line items. Now, one of the things that we do here, we follow national best practices, is we don't just tell you what we had for a budget last year and what we're asking for this year and what the increase is. We give you 3 years actual, the current budget, 21, the 6-month figure of where we are mid-year, and then what we're asking for fiscal 2022. And that's broken out by all the line items. This is highway administration. This is highway construction and maintenance division. Here you have the parks division. This is the cemetery division. Here is the engineering division. And then last but not least, we've got snow and ice. And you heard Scott talk about trees. He mentioned the increase in the contractual services for the cranes. That's the increase that you see right here. And then tree lighting. So that's the finished budget document that we put together for you as we go through it here. But also as we go through with your review, in each section of these budgets are completed, we do print a master finished document that follows national best practices. You know, we receive a national award for our budget, and that is typically put up online. We've done that every year for over a decade, with the exception of fiscal 21, because during COVID, I had no assistant town administrator and I had no health agent and no state budget, and it was kind of a chaotic year. And we just never put together this 350-page finished budget document. Obviously, all the line items and the spreadsheets are there, and we did a whole separate presentation. But this is what we typically do for you and what we do for the residents. And I appreciate the indulgence to kind of roll through this so that people can see it. And as I said, this will all get packaged together in a finished budget document and put online for folks to review. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that time.
All right, do we have any questions of John?
Yeah, John, just a quick question. I remember reading somewhere, and I'm trying to find it, when you didn't backfill the assistant DPW director. I thought it was like you hired a light equipment operator. So that's reflected in that table.
Yeah, I'll come
But I
back
thought
here. Yep.
Yeah, and okay, so that was, but not all that. Okay.
So yeah, so sometimes
I see. I
Yep.
see. So you're still down from 20 and a half to 19. Okay, I get it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So it's not money wise, but it's people.
Position, yeah. And look, I'll give the DPW director credit. The assistant DPW director position would take the load off of his plate. And what Scott did, as a good leader would do, is he wanted his line staff to have the resources so that they can accomplish. You had asked a question, Bob, about all these new parks and playgrounds and White Cliffs and the down common. Yeah, all that stuff needs to be maintained, and we have less staffing in DPW than most towns our size, and that's why we chose to reallocate there. Just as a point of reference, Northborough's 15,000. The town of Westboro is 18,000. They have something like 35 or 38 more employees in their DPW than we have. We don't even have 38 total.
Yeah.
They have 38 more than we have. So we get a great bang for our buck out of this department, and the guys do a great job.
But you did lose I'm looking at this again. You did lose a heavy equipment operator though. So you did go down one there.
What happened was, sometimes we're trying to find and groom our talent. It's sort of, think of it as the light equipment operator is sort of the farm league for us. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we'll hire, in this case, we had a student who, one of our seasonal workers who was a college student, decided not to go back to college and was a great worker. And so we picked him up on a permanent basis, but he doesn't have his CDL and some of his heavy equipment licensure. But as he gained some experience, eventually he'll be promoted up to a heavy equipment operator. So we sort of groom folks that way.
Okay.
It's a good way to know that you're getting somebody great because you've trained them.
Okay. So you didn't get rid of a heavy equipment. It's just the person disappeared or whatever.
Yeah. If you look at the numbers, you see there's 6 and there's 7 positions there. They just sort of changed in the mix the last couple of years.
I must have misread it. Okay. Yeah.
Through the chair, we had a long-term employee retire, and one of the seasonals applied for the open position as a light equipment operator. He had been working with us for well over 3 years as seasonal, and we were very happy to bring him on board. So.
Okay. All right. No, I think I'm all straight. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we try to make it as, as straightforward and clean as we can. So you see where the bodies are coming, how they're used, and what changes we've made over the years.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, seeing none, the next item on the agenda is the Water, Sewer, and Solid Waste Enterprise Fund, which will be postponed according to our schedule until March 11th. And I'll let John give a quick note on why this will be postponed.
Yeah, so we had put together these budgets, and then literally as we were going over them yesterday, we received our MWRA water assessment, which was significantly different, let's just say, than what we had thought it would be in plan. And so we need a little bit more time to contact the MWRA, get some information, and review that. But it could substantially change the budget outlook. The assessment came in a lot higher than anticipated. And what we're finding is a lot of towns are seeing that because basically folks are home and they're using a lot more water. And the way our assessment works in sort of a retro perspective, it's changed things a little bit. So the DPW director would like a little bit of time just to have some conversations with the MWRA and kind of clean that up. So we're just going to slide that over. What I'm showing on your screen now is an updated schedule. And on March 11th, where it says other departments, if needed, we've moved the water and sewer enterprise funds into that slot for you. As soon as those are wrapped up, though, we'll shoot them out so you can take a look at them. Outside of the water, things are pretty straightforward. Okay.
Thank you.
So that brings us up to our next meeting date, which will be February 25th. And on this date, for those who didn't watch last week or who usually watch our meetings, this will be an extended meeting. We will start 1 hour early. The meeting will start at 6 o'clock. And this is because this is the K-8 schools and the regional schools budget presentation. And in the past, the Appropriations Committee has met with the schools on a Saturday, and spent the entire Saturday morning and sometimes into the afternoon going over the budget. But because of the virus going on now, and because the schools and the towns are working so closely together and the budgets have been moving much more smoothly, we're going to do this on a regular meeting night. But we anticipate it might take a little longer than our normal couple hours. So this will start at 6 o'clock, and if necessary, go through till 9.
Also, Mr. Chairman, if I may, so earlier today or this afternoon, I did forwarded you the budget books and the presentation information from the superintendent for your meeting next week. So you have that information already. And it is substantial. So if you need a printed copy, please let us know.
Thank you.
All right.
So that being said, do we have any other business to come before the committee?
No other business this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any other comments or questions from the committee? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Move to adjourn?
Hey, that was George, move to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Uh, Did I get that backwards? Okay, we had a motion made and seconded to adjourn the meeting. I'll have to take a roll call.
I don't know if I could do both. I'm sorry.
A roll call. George, do you approve adjourning the meeting?
Aye.
Janice,
Hi.
Bob?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
And myself, aye. So that